I'm excited about this episode of the Elite Recruiter podcast. I have my special guest, Matt Parkin, who is a branding expert, to talk about some of the things that we need to do as recruiters to one, increase our brand, increase so that clients and candidates can easily find us. And one of the most important things that I'm actually excited about having Matt on here is building your own personal brand. I know, and this is from a mistake that I made many years ago in the early days of LinkedIn. I spent my entire LinkedIn presence was my company's brand, which of course, want to make placements, want to make more money. But then when I left that company, my brand was almost like gone. I had to like restart again. So one of the important things that we're going to talk about today is building your brand, separating your brand from your company that you're working at, but at the same time, still helping build your company's brand too. So Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So how did you even get started in this branding space?
So it started off when I was looking for a job. I feel like most people start networking and building a presence when they want something. And in my case, I was looking for a job at the time. And so I was building some entrepreneurial ventures on the side. And I thought it'd be cool to share some of the learnings I was having along the way. At that point, I was by no means an expert, but I figured that my personal stories might be helpful for someone else who might also want to be building entrepreneurial adventures. And while I was doing that, I was screening a lot of applications for volunteers and interns. And so I started sharing resume tips and cover letter tips and LinkedIn tips along the way. And that led me to getting inquiries from people that wanted to hire me as a career coach. And so by building a presence online and by creating content, that had actually turned into a business opportunity. So while I was still looking for a job, I was helping other people find jobs as well. And so that was a really eye-opening experience for me to realize that you can be sitting at home in your bedroom, in your pajamas, putting some words on a piece of paper and posting that on LinkedIn, and you can have job opportunities come your way, client opportunities come your way. I actually met some of my co-founders that I started a nonprofit with in the comment section of a LinkedIn Live event. So platform has been a game changer for me. And after I landed that first job and going to recruiting events, recruiters were saying, "Hey, Matt, I've seen your content on LinkedIn." And that's when that light bulb unlocked for me to say, okay, this is really where I need to be spending my time. And regardless of what industry you're working in, what stage in your career, there is literally no downside to building a brand on LinkedIn. So now I spend my days helping other people do the same.
So one of the things need to get this question out first. I'm an old school recruiter, been around the block in the old, like the OG days of LinkedIn when it was like maybe like under 2 million like people. The game has changed. The platform has changed. Why should us recruiters go out there and put content out there?
So the big thing to think about before you start doing that is to answer that question for yourself, because everyone's going to have a different reason, right? Someone might be wanting to get a new job opportunity. Someone might be wanting to land new clients. Maybe as a recruiter, you're looking to connect with other job seekers, right? And the big thing about creating content online is it allows you to build trust at scale. You can take 10 minutes, write a post it on LinkedIn. Thousands of people will see it. I don't know about you, but I can't name 1,000 people off the top of my head that I know right now, but thousands of people will see those posts. And so if you start doing that on a consistent basis, I've been posting almost every weekday for the last 3 years now. You're generating tens of thousands of impressions each week. And that's people seeing your content, your face, your name. They get to see how you speak, how you think, how you interact with people in the comment section. And if they like what you have to say, chances are they're going to click your name, go to your profile, say, oh, this person's a recruiter. I want to click on their company website and see what job opportunities they have. Or maybe I'm looking to hire someone and I want to hire them to be my recruiter. So that's really the funnel that I typically see people approach when they're on the platform, is that they're creating content. You get people visiting your profile, and then people go over to your website to convert.
And I know when it comes to like the creating a content, like you want to create the content in mind of who you're trying to reach. But if you're just getting started on creating LinkedIn content, what are some of the first steps that we should be doing to even get this ball rolling?
Yeah, that's a great first step to think about who you're wanting to reach and why you're posting, right? Because if you're someone that is running their own recruiting company and your main goal is to attract potential employers, right? Then maybe some of your content is going to be very focused on here are 3 things you should ask a recruiter before you hire them. Or here are 3 things I wish I knew before getting into recruiting. Or here are 3 things I wish I asked my first candidate during a screening call. Those types of educational posts that might be super relevant for that person. Now, back to what you're saying at the beginning is that making sure we're not keeping our employer brand and personal brand too combined and together. Thinking about anyone in your network who is not a recruiter or not interested in your recruiting content, what other learnings do you have that you can share with them to still apply and be applicable? So if you're thinking about a content strategy, maybe 3 days a week you're posting recruiting related content, and maybe 2 days a week you're posting motivational content, leadership tips, things that you wish you knew earlier on in your career that could be applicable to a broader audience. Because some of those broader audience posts will get you a lot more reach, a lot more impressions, a lot more engagement, but will probably bring you fewer conversions. Compared to those posts that are a bit more niche in subject matter, you're probably not getting as much reach, but the reach you do get is going to be with the people you're wanting to target, and you'll likely see more conversions from those smaller reach posts.
So one, I think like writing every day is hard, at least for me. I know there's people out there like yourself that are just like, it almost looks natural. What about for those recruiters that are out there that, want to just start get it going? They start putting some posts out. Like I have many posts that I don't even get a single like on them. Like, what's wrong?
Yeah. So when it comes to writing, I think a great way to get started is by commenting on other people's posts, because
Okay.
that takes away the ideation piece for you to have to think of a topic. Someone's already chosen the topic for you. You can go to their post, leave a small comment on their post, and you can copy and paste that comment onto a document for yourself. And if you do that 5 to 10 times a day for 15 minutes, now all of a sudden you have a bunch of post prompts that you can take and elaborate on a little bit to create your own content. So that's another strategy that you can use to help with that ideation. And on the writing daily piece, I personally don't write my posts every day. Even though I'm posting every day, I typically will sit down for a 60 to 90-minute batch and write as many posts as I can in that window. And then we'll pre-schedule them out, because life gets busy. You sleep in one day or you're running late from the gym, and now all of a sudden it's day 47 and you haven't posted yet that morning. So I think that's another great strategy to be able to ride those creativity waves when you have those ideas, to be able to get as much down on paper as you can. And then on those days where you don't feel like posting or you don't have any creative inspiration, it's okay, because you've already got a backlog of posts that you can post.
Oh, and this is a new tool with LinkedIn, and I'm glad you highlighted that. You can actually on LinkedIn schedule your posts. I know I do that for half the time. If you ever see it in the recruiter podcast video content, that's me on a Sunday scheduling it out for the week, so I don't have to think about it the rest of the week.
100%. It's a great tool to use directly within the platform. Before they had that, you had to, pay for external scheduling tools. So it's good that they have that in the actual platform now. And you had mentioned some posts, getting no likes or one like, right? And some of the top reasons that I see for underperforming posts, a lot of times they're either too salesy. So someone's trying to plug a book or a podcast or a newsletter or a product or an article. And a lot of times people don't want to leave the platform. And the algorithm has been situated in a way that LinkedIn wants you to stay on the platform. So if you're posting posts that have a link to, hey, go subscribe to my newsletter, or hey, go check out my book on my website, LinkedIn's going to kill the reach on those posts. So what I find is a great way to get around that is, for example, if you want someone to look at the podcast episode, to share that podcast video or share some 3 takeaways from the podcast, wait for someone else to comment on the post, and then you can link in the comments the link to that podcast or that blog or that book. So that gets around the link in the post that's killing the reach, while still giving your audience the ability to go and find that afterwards if they do want to leave the platform.
Oh, I did not know that. I mean, I always figured that LinkedIn is like playing the game, like, hey, like stay on our platform, live on our platform. Because I know, like, when it comes to actual content creation, I think it's the numbers up. Content creation on LinkedIn is up 41% compared to last year. But I love that you're like, if you put a link to like your website, to your recruiting website, to this kind of stuff, like LinkedIn's killing it. So we now have to like put that in the comments of the comment of a comment is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, because there's another stat out there. I don't have it off the top of my head, but if you're commenting the first one on your own post, then they also don't like that as well. So that's why I typically wait until someone else comments and then I'll comment.
Okay, good to know. Well, I mean, one of the things like us old dogs are like the game is always changing, the algorithm's always changing, and it's hard to sometimes keep up with what's going on in social media.
It's definitely hard to stay on top of things. And I think the one way that you can stay on top of that is by following other people who are active on the platform. I talk to a lot of people who say, "Oh, I only connect with people I've met in real life." One person I chatted with, he said, "Yep, I have about 5,000 connections. I've almost met every single one of them, in person or at a conference or at an event." And I think the old school versus new school mind of thinking with LinkedIn is the more people you can connect with, assuming they're somewhat relevant to you and your interests and your professional goals, the better, right? Because if they can see your content, maybe they're not a potential customer. Maybe their brother or their nephew or their niece or their sister or their old teacher or their coworker sees that they liked or commented on your post and is then going to reach out to you. So that's something to think about is trying to connect and follow as many people in your network that are relevant to you or you might be interested in learning from, and don't worry as much if you don't actually know them in real life.
Yeah, no, I think I got about 18,000 connections on LinkedIn, and if you want a good laugh, I've been going through on a weekly basis and starting to delete people. And when we talk about personal branding versus like company branding, it's one of the things I'm going back and looking at is there's a lot of people that they started their LinkedIn profile when they were at a company. So that email was attached to that, or their profile was attached to that company's email address. And the second they're no longer working there, they have lost access to their LinkedIn profile. I'm sure that doesn't happen as much anymore, but I'm sitting there going through, I think I deleted about 30 profiles, people from back in the Aerotech days that I know they're not longer at Aerotech anymore.
Yeah, sometimes I've seen it too, where you search someone's name and they have two different LinkedIn profiles because obviously there's been some issue with the password reset or the password memory. But I think when you're thinking about creating content, I talk to a lot of people who are a little bit hesitant to post on LinkedIn because, for example, maybe they're working in cybersecurity and they don't want to constantly be posting about cybersecurity because then if they move to healthcare afterwards, now they become known as the cybersecurity person, right? And so to your point about trying to differentiate that personal brand from that employer brand, you could have yourself or your employees posting about anything. It doesn't have to be remotely even related to the company, right? If they're getting extra impressions, if your employees are getting thousands of impressions every week on their name and their face, chances are a handful of those are clicking onto their profile and seeing that they work at the company, clicking on the company website and potentially applying to a job, buying a product or inquiring about a service. And so you see a lot of companies that, employees are obviously copy and pasting the blog to the company website with the set words that, have been provided by the employer branding team. And those posts are not getting reached. People are not engaging with them. And it's unlikely that it's going to come across as authentic. Whereas if that employee is sharing a leadership lesson that they've learned or a motivational quote, that's going to get a lot more reach and attention for your employee and your company. So that's something to think about from the employer side of things, to be empowering your employees to build their personal brands and to not be controlling what they're posting. But at the same time, very carefully not requiring or mandating it, because I see a lot of teams specifically in sales and recruiting space that are very heavily trying to encourage their employees to be creating content. And at the end of the day, it is their personal social media account, right? So it's a very fine line to be encouraging versus mandating. So I would just keep that in mind too, that don't mandate your employees to be posting on LinkedIn, and try to encourage them, provide them with training, provide them with time to be doing it during work hours, even empower them as much as you can, but don't cross that line of mandating it.
So I know not mandating it is important, but I also feel like, and here's going to another question. I think sometimes leaders are afraid of letting their employees build a strong personal brand. One, because you might lose them. Two, you know, you kind of want them to focus on whatever. But like at the same time, what you're saying is if when they build a stronger personal brand, it's going to reap the benefits for the organization too.
Exactly. And you'd have to pull out a spreadsheet and do some number crunching. But I'd imagine even if you did lose that employee and had to spend money on recruiting to replace them, if they've been building their brand long enough, the offset of the additional impressions and job applications and customers that your company has received from that person's personal brand, I would argue might be a positive ROI there. But you'd have to crunch the numbers and do some research there. But that's some food for thought.
Okay, awesome. So before we jump over to the next side of the podcast, is there anything else that you would love to share about like copywriting, LinkedIn branding, or that kind of stuff?
Yeah, on the copywriting front, just making sure that your posts are eligible and being able to be easily read on mobile. So a lot of people are using LinkedIn on mobile. You can look in your stats to see what percentage of viewers are on mobile versus desktop. And that would be something to reflect on for those who are posting big, chunky paragraphs. People are scrolling by that on their phone, right? So trying to include as much white space, as much one-liners as you can, even if it's not grammatically correct. There's a lot of my posts where I'll have one liners and maybe I'm starting a sentence with an and or a but or not having a comma or a period, but it's getting that white space that allows people to easily skim it. So that would be something to reflect on, is to toss out the grammar for the legibility in terms of the skimmability of the post.
So when you say white space, what do you mean by white space on a post?
Yeah. So if you think about a typical LinkedIn post, there's 5 lines worth of posts on text posts that you can see before someone has to click see more to see the rest of the post. So typically, instead of writing those full 5 lines, I would write a one liner. I would then leave the second line blank. So I would hit enter twice. And then I would write a one liner on that third line, leave the fourth line blank, and then write a one liner on that fifth line. And so that is very easy to skim for someone compared to if they see 3 or 4 full lines of text being a big paragraph, they might not even read it and they might just scroll by. So that's a great way to have a scroll stopping attention grabber to then get people to continue reading more. Because the longer they spend on your post, that increases the dwell time for the algorithm, which will then also boost the post's reach.
Okay, no, it's good to know because I mean, like I've seen white space. I've been around some copywriters talking about it, but I know not everybody's like thinking about that kind of stuff, thinking about how to make it clickable, thinking make it how to be like easily readable. So definitely good to know. All right, so got some questions. We're going to make it towards the like content creation for recruiters. So if you're just getting started in the recruiting space and the recruiting business this year, and you need it, it's 2023, you need to make content. What advice would you give to a brand new recruiter that's just starting out in recruiting, but also needs to create content?
I would look at your followers and connections list and send a quick 10-second voice direct message. So on LinkedIn mobile app, you can send an audio message, 10 seconds, send it to 25 people and say, hey, appreciate you following me here on LinkedIn. I'm going to start creating some content. Are there any topics or questions that you think would be interesting for me to post about? Do that for 25 people, 10 seconds per message. You can bang that off in 15, 20 minutes kind of thing. And that, not everyone will reply, but I've done that before and I've gotten 10, 15, 20 responses of people giving me 3 or 4 post ideas each. And that's very quickly an easy way to generate content for an
Hmm.
entire month that is driven by your audience and what they're wanting to learn instead of what you think they want to hear from you. Another strategy that you can do is a LinkedIn poll. So you can post a LinkedIn poll and say, hey, these are 4 topics that I'm thinking about posting about. Which ones would be most interesting for you? I did that recently and I asked people, should I be posting about LinkedIn and personal branding, entrepreneurial learnings, HR, talent acquisition? And surprisingly, a lot of people wanted to hear more entrepreneurial learnings and less about the LinkedIn personal branding piece. And so that was a wake up call for me to say, hey, instead of posting 4 times a week about LinkedIn and personal branding, maybe I'm only going to do that twice a week and add in 2 posts per week that are very entrepreneurial learnings that could be applicable to folks that maybe don't feel comfortable creating a brand. So that would be my one piece of advice, would be to ask your audience what they want to see.
Okay, definitely good advice, especially for somebody just getting started. And here's another question. There's plenty of us old dogs like they've been around since the OG days of LinkedIn. the algorithm has changed completely since then. It's now a land of influencers. What does it take for us old school recruiters, or what do we need to do as us old school recruiters to really just move forward into the 2023, 2024 way of creating content?
I would say that you have a wealth of knowledge because you have all of those years of experience that other people don't. And so even if you don't, even if you aren't actively trying to accomplish a goal in terms of filling a role, sharing some of your learnings that you've had from your career journey is going to be super helpful for those that are 5, 10, 15 years behind you in their journey. And even if that content is not salesy or not directly contributing to your current goals, other people are going to see that you add value and that you educate and that you inspire and motivate and help people out. And they're going to say, hey, that's the kind of person that I would want to potentially work with or hire. And for the people that you're creating content for who are learning from you, maybe that's a future employee in the future. Maybe they can refer you to someone who has a contact. One of the one of the big name entrepreneurs that I remember came and spoke to us when I was back in business school. He recently dropped me a note because I'm in the space and said he was looking for a new opportunity and asked if I could make some intros to some headhunters. I was like, wow, this is someone I really look up to and I've learned a lot from him. I'm absolutely 3 GM intros sent like 5 minutes later, right? So that's something that you can think about that even though if people are maybe younger or earlier on in their journey, they can still add value for you to keep that reciprocal relationship.
Awesome. That's great. And I love that like that person that reached out to you because of what you're doing on the LinkedIn space, asking for help on like what's the best recruiters that you know. So that's awesome. Do you have a book that's had a huge impact on your career?
I would say Simon Sinek's Start With Why is a really great read. I found that it was helpful for me to think through why I'm doing things and to prioritize my time and my energy and my skills on opportunities and relationships that directly contribute to that why. And I found that for me, that allows me to easily motivate myself so that I can put in extra hours because it doesn't feel like what I'm doing is work. It's something that I enjoy doing. And so I think if you can really tap into why you're doing things and try your best to align 80, 90, 95% of what you're doing on a day to day basis directly to that why, that can really help you stay motivated and manage your energy and time better.
Awesome. Do you have like a favorite like tool that you use for LinkedIn?
Ooh, I mean, I guess I can't say the LinkedIn platform itself. I use Shield Analytics. It's a analytics tool for LinkedIn, and that provides a little bit of more granular insight than what the LinkedIn platform can give you itself in terms of analytics, to the point where you can actually filter to see which days are the best to post on, all of your best performing content over the last year. So that's another piece that I've used in the past. That's been a cool tool to use on the side. I don't use it every day, but I do check in with it every week or two, and it's a great way to repurpose content too. Because that's the other thing about LinkedIn. A lot of people think that you have to be groundbreaking, innovative, and post something brand new that nobody's ever heard of, right? But if you share a learning that you've had in your day, chances are other people have had that learning, right? You don't hear someone say a motivational quote and be like, oh, I've already heard that before. You say, oh yeah, that's motivational, right? Thanks for sharing that. And so if you're able to share learnings, it doesn't have to be groundbreaking, it doesn't have to be new. And not everyone's on LinkedIn every day. So if you go back to your LinkedIn post from 6 months ago and it, got a few thousand views, chances are you could probably copy paste it, post it 6 months later. Most people will not remember the post. Most people in your network likely wouldn't have seen it the first time. And you're really the only one that's going to say, oh, like I'm repurposing content. They're going to think poorly about me. But chances are most people are not going to remember that post. So that'd be another tip in terms of being efficient with content creation. Realistically, if you build out 4 or 5 months of content, you can repurpose some of that and then continue adding new stuff as you go.
Awesome. That's great advice. Now, what do you think has been a major part of your own personal success?
I would say taking that leap to create my own opportunities and not wait for someone to give me permission to do anything. Right. So going out there and starting creating content on LinkedIn back when I was still in university there were a lot of people at the time that were not doing that. Now there's a lot more students that I see on the platform that are starting to create content. And that's something that, I wasn't necessarily an expert. I still don't consider myself an expert, but I really think that to get over that imposter syndrome that a lot of people face is just realizing that you don't need to be an expert. You're the expert in your own personal stories and journeys. And so if you can share those personal stories and journeys with others, other people can see value from that. So don't get caught up in saying, hey, I don't have 20 years of experience. I'm new to this industry. I'm still a student. I'm still in my 20s. It doesn't matter how old you are, where you are in life. Everyone has something to learn from everyone else.
Now, here's a question that I love. Everything that you know now about branding, business, entrepreneurship, if you can go sit down and have a cup of coffee with yourself right when you're getting out of college, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say to not get caught up in the metrics. It's something that very early on, I was constantly looking at the posts and saying, oh, this one got 10 likes, this one got 20, this one got 30. And it becomes very unhealthy if you're starting to constantly be looking at those metrics because, like I was saying earlier, I've had some posts that have brought me the most clients that have very few impressions. And I've had posts that have hit 80,000 impressions and have had no conversions from them. So it's really something to think through, to not be focused on the metrics and don't be posting just so you can be getting that, external vanity metric validation that you're getting likes and comments and reach. Be posting because you genuinely care about helping your network and adding value and staying top of mind, and know that eventually good things will come from it.
What do you think is the future of creating content on LinkedIn?
It'll be interesting. I think the platform is really pushing video and image content right now, especially with the rise of generative AI and ChatGPT. I think we're going to see a lot more people writing text-based posts, and that's going to really clutter and flood the space. So the more that people can be authentic and share video clips, I see people that will take a 30-second video on their walk to pick their kids up from school, and they'll just share a thought that they've had that day, right? Like, you don't need a whole setup. You don't need a lighting and sound cue. You just need to be authentic, right? So being able to post a selfie and add some thoughts or share a video as you're walking to work is a great way to stand out. And I think the more that people can do that, they'll be able to build trust and relationships with others.
Is it important to, when you make a post, to add a picture or a video? Or should you do a combination of like just text based and image and video stuff?
I think a combination is good because if you think about the way companies advertise, right? Not all of your customers are going to be in the same place. They'll all have different preferences, right? Companies might advertise on the radio, in a newspaper, on a billboard, and people are going to perceive those in different ways. Same thing applies with your LinkedIn content, right? There'll be a lot of people who see a video and scroll by because they don't want to watch it. There'll be other people that see a wall of text and they're like, I'm not reading that. But maybe they're washing the dishes and they'll play your 90-second video and listen to it while they're doing the dishes, right? So that's something to think about. Alternate those format posts, see what resonates the best with your audience. And I would say I've been leaning a little bit heavier into picture and video content lately just because the algorithm seems to like it recently, but that might change soon. So I think it's good to keep a broad perspective in terms of the types of content that you're sharing.
Awesome. Well, Matt, before I let you go, is there anything else you would love to share with the listeners?
I would say feel free to connect with me if you're looking to chat more about this, and don't be afraid to send that direct message, comment on that post, hit that post button, because there's nothing but good things that will come from it. I can literally count on one hand the number of hate comments I've gotten in the last 3 years. It's very, very minimal. When you're posting on other TikTok, Instagram platforms, a lot of people have anonymous profiles and will fill your comments with hate. But on LinkedIn, it happens very, very rarely because all of their lawyers will see that. So that's something to keep in mind, that don't be afraid about being poorly viewed or getting any hate comments, because it very rarely happens.
Awesome. Well, Matt, definitely thank you for coming on the Elite Recruiter podcast. Thank you for helping us all up level our LinkedIn game. It's something that I think is important, especially for us older OG LinkedIn members, since the algorithm has changed so much, to learn, listen, and start implementing. So, Matt, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And for the listeners, guys, until next time.